If you're ready for freedom from the grind, then passive income from real estate investing is the best way to get you there. If you don't know where to start or what to do next, then the Rent Roll Radio Show is the best place to get you there. Join us while we discuss the best practices, strategies, and mindset you'll need and give you actionable content to get you from where you are to where you want to be. Hey, Rent Roll Radio listeners, welcome back to the show. As always, I'm your host, Sterling Chapman. Today, we are joined with Patrick Traynor. He is founder of Gamma Income. He's also the co-host of the Banana King podcast. I had the opportunity to get to know Pat a little bit better a couple of weeks ago. He came by the office and we had a good chat, and I thought he had a great story and a great future, and I wanted to get him on the show to learn a little bit more about him and to have our listeners learn a little bit more about him. So, Mr. Traynor, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Like, you're going to be forever linked to like my image of quitting my job.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Go ahead.
I'm leaving my job, and I met with you. I had lunch, met with you, and then in the Uber to the dinner, I'm quitting my job.
That's awesome. How did that go, by the way? Did he tell you you don't have to spend the next 2 weeks, or did you end up working a couple extra weeks?
No, somebody suggested to give like a month's notice because our job is more like complex. Like, it takes a little while to get some things done. So I said like the end of this month. So really, like, tomorrow is my last like actual day. So
nice. I was gonna do the same. I was gonna tell our boss, like, hey man, if you need me to stick around a month or something, like whatever you need with the transition.
Yeah. So by the time I left your office and was like floating back to New Orleans, it was on the East Coast. It was probably 6:30 at that time. So I had like a 30-minute conversation with the president, and then maybe a 5-minute conversation with we'll say like the national director. So, I think one was great. And then 5 minutes is kind of like, okay, he was probably not thrilled to hear that on a Friday.
Hey, y'all fire on Fridays. We quit on Fridays.
Yeah, I know. Friday's the best day for it. You can think about your plan for the next weekend,
Nice. Well, tell us your story, man. Tell us where you came from, what you were doing before, how you got into real estate, and what you plan on doing going forward.
Yeah, I guess I've always been interested in, real estate and finance. And my grandfather had 15 apartments. So I was just always around, the fixing and the flipping and the landscaping and lawns and snow removal and all that type of stuff. Some positive things about tenants and some not so positive. So I think my grandfather was known as Albany's biggest realtor. Biggest realtor because of his size. He was more than 400 pounds. So, so my father was a real estate attorney. So like deeds and county clerk's office and mortgages. Those are things like when I was 10, 12, 15 years old, I've done hundreds of by the time that happened. So sometime in high school into college, I was like, this is when like finance and investment banking and trading was like got into the foray. Like that was like the top echelon of the economy. So I decided I wanted to go into like finance and got into private wealth to start for Merrill Lynch, and did some trading and equity analysis and got good in capital markets and investment management, and did that from 2005, 6 to, tomorrow and tomorrow leaving financial services and getting into real estate. And, off the side of my desk, whether it was, high school, it was like a 3-sport athlete. And I worked in a restaurant. When it was college, it was school, and, played football and worked in a restaurant. And then after college, I worked the job and then worked in a restaurant. So like, I'm always like, kind of got a good work ethic. And so when I had the jobs bubbled up to a higher income, I started buying some real estate maybe 10 years ago. Every year, buy 1 or 2 properties. And maybe 5 or 6 years ago, just started being a part of these 50 and 150 unit complexes. And over time, just met 300, 400 operators. And it came to a point of like, I can definitely do that.
Yeah.
But at my company, I couldn't because of, I'm in mutual fund land. So
Sure,
stocks and
sure.
bonds. So it created a natural wedge, and it came to a point of like I wasn't making the same as I was making on the vertical income, but that horizontal income was bubbling up to be enough to leave. So I left.
Nice.
That's the long and
Nice.
short of it.
So what kind of properties did you start buying 10 years ago?
Bank owned condos and then 6 unit and 7 unit apartment buildings. So maybe I bought 16 or 17 units, and then I was making, accredited investor type of status. So it became like I was working on that landlording stuff, which wasn't where I was making the most money. So I
Yeah.
tried to stop trading my time for money. And I think that's something that you're thinking about too, right? Like you've gotten into the property management, you've gotten into whether it's syndications or private placements, however you look at it. But I think what you're saying to yourself too is, passive income that comes in a monthly basis or quarterly basis is a lot stronger than, trading time for money.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. And landlording is trading time for money. And people don't talk about that enough. People say like, I want to go buy rental properties for passive income. If you ever own rental properties, there's nothing passive about it. And so it's like, well, how do you scale your way out of that? Because and I guess everybody's different. Maybe there's somebody who wants to die with $1 more than the second richest guy in the world, and that's what drives them. I mean, but for me, every year it's like, all right, I want to make twice as much money next year as I made last year. And then finally I got to a point where it's like, all right, I just want to make the same amount of money. I just want to work half as much. and and so you kind of like unpack it and work backwards from there. And it's like, well, how can I, like, I'm doing all this stuff, but how could I still reap the financial benefits of it, but not be the one actually doing it? And it's leverage, but it's instead of leveraging dollars, you're leveraging people. And so, I think I told you, I managed the first 26 properties we had, and it was terrible. And then I hired third party managers, and it was worse.
Yeah.
And so the solution was to build a property management company to where I'm overseeing it. I'm making sure it's done right, but I'm not actually doing it because I don't have any skill sets around plumbing
Right.
or I'm not an
Yeah.
electrician. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's kind of like every time there's a 4 day weekend is a surety that there's a problem. And
Yeah, for sure.
I
For
was,
sure.
I can't remember if it was 4th of July or Memorial Day, but I'm out in the boat with like a lot of friends. And, I think the air conditioning went out somewhere in New Jersey, and like the fire department comes, police come, like for air conditioning to go out, and so like I'm on the phone for hours in Texas, and it's a Saturday, and everybody else is having a good time, and they're looking at me, and I'm just like I'm on a different picnic table, just like having these conversations with police officers and firemen, and they're like, I'm never doing that. I'm never like doing what you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get it. So I think like what we're doing right now is like it improves scale, and you can only do scale when it's easily when you can have a leasing office and a property management company. So, usually it's not perfect, but it's like 100 units sounds about right for getting leasing offices and property management. And can any one person do that by themselves? Not really. It would be like your whole net worth, and then you're putting like all your eggs in one basket. So I feel like this is the best way for me to scale. And similar to what you were saying, last year was basically a year where I could have had the net worth keep on creeping higher, but I chose to have some virtual assistants and build out an infrastructure where I kind of take a step down to take the step up. And
It's a
yeah,
choice. It's a choice you have to keep making. And it's hard. It's hard to turn it like it's just, I don't know if I told you this. I've said it a million times. When I turned those 26 units over to property management, um, fast forward 24 months and I had bought another, you know, 50 units and a few apartment complexes. And it was like, I wouldn't have done any of that if I was still personally managing those 26 units. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a shit show. The property managers lost tons of money and my portfolio performed horribly because I wasn't babysitting it. But it freed up my time, energy, and focus to go build all this other stuff. And it didn't bankrupt me while they were doing a terrible job. And I've taken it back and now we're doing great again. But, sometimes it's, and that was, dude, that was I remember trying to make the decision, like when to turn it over to property management. I remember doing the math and being like, dude, that's like 60 grand a year. Like, and I
Yeah.
just I couldn't justify it, I couldn't justify that. But when you do it, when you're forced to do it and you see the productivity on the other side, it's like, well, I need to give everything away, so that is like my mission is to just give as much away, just keep giving away and just keep giving away and just create SOPs and create systems and processes and hire people and put them in there. The reality is most of the people I'm hire are better at everything than I am. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not really,
Just
I'm
doing
not
it.
really, I'm not really good at much except for like a willingness to
Doubt
take
that.
risk and a little bit of charisma when it comes to like sales and you know what I mean. But everything else is most people are better at, right? Like my property manager is better at managing property than I am. My marketing guy is better at marketing than I am. My project manager is better at managing my rehabs than I am. Like,
Yeah,
and
because you're only devoting like 5% of your time to it, So
right.
how would you be good at that? I mean, I talked this with one of my virtual assistants. She has like an opinion that I'm not great with technology, but I'm like choosing to not be great with these technology things because I have to think on the 30,000 foot view down of like the vision of the organization. And if I step into the minutia of the day-to-day singles and doubles and you know, like whack through the weeds, like it's not going to be the most productive dollars per hour. So,
Yeah.
I think like you kind of think about what are dollars per hour worth, and over time, it's $50 an hour, it's $500 an hour, and you keep on thinking like, what is going to be my most productive hours, and that has to let some of the properties kind of go. And uh, yeah, I sold one of the first property that I ever bought. I sold this year, and I think it was a cash flowing asset, and of course, it didn't double, but it was pretty close to doubling. Um, and basically just buy it to build the coffers to build this business up, and that should be able to buy some $15 million properties.
So what does the structure of your company look like today? I mean, you quit your job tomorrow and you've hired virtual assistants and your business model is you're going to start a fund and go buy apartment complexes. Is that what we talked about?
Yeah, like my goal is like for my group, like I think what I told you is, my group is closer to high net worth individuals, and it's a lot of folks. So what I'm trying to do is like cobble up a couple of dollars and take down some larger properties. So a $3 million facility is just not big enough. So I think if we do a $5 million capital raise, we can buy $15 million worth of self storage. Or separately, if we find a hotel that's like on an auction block that's like lost its Marriott brand, can we go into it and do the renovations and make it Hilton or Marriott again? Or if it's a
Is that how
traditional.
that works? Is that I've never played in the space.
Oh,
Is it that they have a certain standards, quality standards, and if the owner operator drops below those standards, they pull the brand and they say,
yeah.
"Hey, call us back when you get your shit together, and we'll give you the brand back."
You had it pretty close. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, like within Marriott and Hilton, that's where almost all the stays are. So, yes, there's Wyndham and some Intercontinental, but for the most part, it's Marriott and Hilton, at least in the United States. 7 to 8 years is when you have to freshen it up. Maybe that means $1 million. Sometimes it's $2 million. But the problem is most people that own hotels, they're institutions for the most part. They don't, similar to multifamily, they don't want to do that labor. So they'll just sell the asset And since they have most of the time, if you have like two hotels, you usually have 20. So the speed of close is actually more popular. So they're much more apt to just put it on an auction block, which is helpful to all cash buyers. But then you have to do the construction. They lose their flag, and 65% of their revenue goes down. So they better get that flag. So
Oh, cool.
so
Interesting concept.
you get a lot of revenue from just being associated to Marriott. So of course they get royalties that are helpful to them, just like McDonald's. But it's a 24/7 business. There's a few revenue streams that come from it. So I think it's just turnaround projects. It's more labor than multifamily. It's more labor than self-storage. But I think there's some environments that, self-storage or multifamily can come in and just be out of the market cycle and just be very unattractive for a moment of time. And I think being diversified through hotels and self-storage and multifamily is how I'm trying to build the practice.
So, how are you so high on hotels with Airbnb and VRBO and the short-term rental movement? Do you not think that that's going to hurt the hotel industry, or has that already corrected?
Yeah, I think it's already hurt the hotel industry. So, will it amplify? I think to a degree, yes, in certain markets. I think in the rural markets, like you think about those bed and breakfast and those things that overlook lakes that a luxury home can take over. I think that's a real risk to those types of places. But in city centers and like that suburban sprawl where there's so much business being going on, similar to your business, people have to go into certain areas and conduct business, and their companies aren't going to approve Airbnbs. So business travelers is going to be a big thing. By airports is going to be a big thing. But I think in the tertiary markets, Airbnb has a big presence. I think in municipalities, they're being more stringent with what is an approved Airbnb. So I think they will be taxed more heavily over time. Yeah,
and then you have the hotel lobbies that are really pushing the regulations. I mean, it happened in New Orleans. I mean, it's about to happen in Baton Rouge. It happened in Atlanta. I mean, the hotel lobbies are pushing hard to get them as banned, and that was people always ask me why I never bought an Airbnb, and it was like, well, I don't want to buy a property that fits a business model like that. They could change the law like the next day, like, hey, I know you paid $1 million for this property that's supposed to be bringing you $100,000 a month, but we changed the law and you can really only rent it out for $2,500 a month now. I'm like, well, that doesn't work.
Risk. It's for sure a real risk. I have somebody that's buying in a rural lake, and he wants to like just go out there for the weekends and Airbnb it for the rest. I'm like, okay,
so that actually sounds less risky to me, and the reason it does, I'll tell you. There is a girl, I say girl, she's a lady named Avery Carl, who has like kind of positioned herself as the expert on short-term rentals. So she wrote the short-term rental book for Bigger Pockets. She's got a real estate brokerage called the Short-Term Shop. And so most of her short-term rentals are in either Gatlinburg or like Panama City. And when I interviewed her, her position on it was, she lives in Nashville. Her position was the people buying Airbnbs in places like Nashville and Austin and New Orleans are at a lot more risk because those local governments don't know how to handle it. The local hotel lobbies have a stronghold. Like they don't want them in there. They're not helpful. You know what I mean? Whereas when you go to markets that have already become accustomed to short-term rentals, like Gatlinburg, Tennessee, or the Panhandle of Florida, right? Like they've been doing vacation rentals since the 70s. Think ski resorts and these different like little
Myrtle Beach and places like that. Yeah,
those places, they've had Airbnbs for 50 years. They're not changing the rule, right? They didn't have to call it Airbnb back then, but they had short-term rentals for 50 years. They have learned to love it. They've learned to tax it, right? Those small local municipalities, they survive off of that Airbnb tax, off of that short-term rental tax. So they want them there.
Yeah.
So she
Yeah,
said,
some
that's why.
municipalities tax and some don't, because there's a lot of places that have
Well,
city tax.
you want the one that's going to tax you. It's counterintuitive. You think you want to run from the taxes, and 9 times out of 10, like I'm a big believer in money goes where it's treated best. You want to run from the taxes. That's why we invest in red states. Not we're not buying. We're not going to have tenants in New York or California where it takes 9 months to kick somebody out and the taxes to the roof. But in this certain circumstance, I think the city taxing it high is a good thing because it means that they're incentivized to not change the rules, right? Because
Right.
then they become your partner. Then they want you there. So
Yeah,
then
more
they're not
revenue.
gonna yeah.
Yeah.
So then you have a less risk of them being willing to change the laws on you because they want you there.
Yep. Yeah, I'm tracking with that. Yeah, I think I'm clicking on the Sun Belt area too. It's I have 16 or 17 apartments up in like that New York City area. And through COVID, it took maybe a year and a half to evict somebody. So
Jeez.
maybe it took more than that. Probably $25,000 of attorney bills, plus them non-payment, plus waiting. So yeah, it's rough. It's rough to have them over in that direction, but it's still just like a lot of markets. There's with the problems that leads like the demand for who's going to solve the problems. And so you can make good cash on cash returns, or you can, really increase the value of a property because there's a lot of eyeballs on the Sun Belt because of the low taxes. So, when somebody says this metroplex is number 3 in the country, how many institutional buyers come into these markets? I have a couple people that are talking about some Montgomery, Alabama and Birmingham, Alabama. There's a lot of eyeballs coming into some of these markets now. And the difference is 300,000 people going to 400,000 is one thing, but for it to get to a million, like that's a hard lift.
Yeah.
So I think some big cities will kind of have their day again, but this is just an environment that's cyclical. And I don't think it's, this isn't the win for some of those, like what you said, blue cities that have high pensions and high liabilities. And that's not going to just end anytime in the near future,
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, for the sake of time, I want to hop over to our radio round. I got a couple questions for you. The first one is, what's your favorite book?
Favorite books. I guess I always think about like the new ones that I'm reading. You and I talked about Who Not How, and that was really helpful to me. It's like it hits you in the face that like, of course, I shouldn't be thinking about how do I do this and how do I do that.
You know, it's
Um,
it's a great little spin-off of that I actually pulled out earlier today. It's Buy Back Your Time.
Five
So
okay, I
yeah,
haven't heard of that one.
it's good. It's good. It's good on Audible, or it's good to read. It was one of my partners recommended it, and I love it. And my complaint to my staff all the time is like, dude, I get decision fatigue. Y'all come in my office and ask me like, what color toilet paper to use, like constantly, like every 30 seconds, somebody's walking in my office asking me something. I'm like, dude, I can't make this many decisions. Y'all have to start making decisions. Y'all need to like leave
Yeah.
me alone so I can get something done. And but there's like a whole chapter in here about it, and he's got like a 1-3-1 rule, and basically what it is like all of his employees, they have to follow the 1-3-1 rule before they're allowed to ask him for help. And
Yep.
it's clearly defined the one problem, right? Because sometimes you get somebody comes to you and they kind of go on a rant, and it's like, all right, well, there's like 8 problems. Like, what's your one question? So define it down to one problem, offer 3 potential solutions, and then suggest which one you like. So, like, if we need to, if my marketing guy Cole, we need to change the color of the logo. Okay. So instead of Cole coming to my office and going, "Hey, what color do you want the logo?" and us sitting here for 30 minutes talking about logo colors, I would say, I would suggest Cole come to me and go, "Sterling, we need to change the logo color. The 3 different options you can look at are blue, red, or yellow. I think the blue looks the best. What do you think?" Yeah, blue, good, go. Right? Versus
Be nice.
you know, so we're actually, yeah.
I'm struggling with like a video editor, and it's just frustrating because it's like, why am I like looking at YouTube of transitions and subtitles? Like, why I need you to like just get 1% better every time, just keep on getting better. So I'm with you on that for sure. You were saying 131, and I was there was this in college. We had like a 212 rule, like an hourglass figure of a girl.
Yeah.
212 is the goal. So 131 is like is the you had me
uh,
thinking about that, the old college
uh,
rule.
oh man. Um, Next question. What's your favorite quote?
Um, like I think like the Grant Cardone quote of like millionaires is the new middle class, so just get bigger. I think that's
Dude,
um we just have
that's
to if we're doing what everybody's doing, we're going to get the same results as everybody. So like we have to think more creatively. We have to be active in our investments. We can't just like go in the most passive way of like a target date fund in a 401k. If
yeah,
we're
that's
trying to
true.
get like the place in the Hamptons or get a different life, you have to do things differently. So I think that quote is strong.
It's so strong. It's so strong. I was thinking about this earlier today, because like I think of myself as successful and I think of myself as rich, but like that's really just because my like my anchor is like 1991, right? I compare my net worth and my income and everything to like how I interpreted it as a child, which as we know, like, you would have to have $2.31 in 1991 to buy something that costs a dollar today. That's not the right way to look at it because really when I look at like all of my friends, my peer groups, my GoBundance members, other successful individuals, my peers, I'm not. They're all way more successful than me, and we're just comparing these amounts we make to like old outdated amounts. Like a millionaire was a cool thing to be in 1990. It's just really not.
Yeah, I mean, think about what a home was in 1990 versus what it is now. So it doesn't like a millionaire these days. It's like you have to be there. So
Right.
I think like
I,
go ahead. What were you saying?
I'm I'm a multimillionaire and I'm broke half the time. Like I don't know, you know.
Yeah, I think for these investments that both you and I do, whatever the rule is for 300,000 or $400,000 a year, and it's either 1 million or $2 million in net worth, and I think that's a good threshold. It's not
So
good for somebody making $50,000, but it is like where we should be thinking we need to be to the top 2% of income earners, top 3% of income earners, and that's our goal to be there or above that kind of every year. You know.
yeah, for sure. But I mean, they're even so the standards to be an accredited investor to invest in a 506c, or it's still a $1 million net worth, and it's a $200,000 income or 300,000 for a married couple combined. Um, there's been a lot of talk about increasing that. It's crazy that it's a blanket policy across the whole country because $200,000 a year is like a freaking CFO in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but it's a dog walker in New York City. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So, or San Francisco. So it doesn't make any sense, right? Because it just that you would
Yeah.
peanut butter spread it like that. Um,
It definitely doesn't make sense when you put it like that, but it is, are they capable of losing all this asset? Like this thing gets hit by a hurricane and the insurance goes under. Is this person's $100,000 investment? Does this person care or not? And that's kind of how I look at all these things that I do is I'm only putting $150,000 to work. So it's not the end of the world. Like it would suck, but it's
right,
not the end
right.
of the world. Like I think I might have told you like my worst investments in private placements at 8%. And that kind of like uh, irritated
Dude,
me quite a bit.
Dude, if
Um,
your mutual fund performed at 8% for five consecutive, like you would be ecstatic. That's great.
yeah, if it was a bond, yeah. I think like for these things, I would compare them. I would compare the preferred returns to bonds, and I would compare the internal rate of return to stocks. So how are you doing? Like compare each year, compare it to it, and I think any
Well,
one year, maybe you can hit the ball out the park with some stocks,
So,
but also any one investment with these private placements, you can hit a home run too.
so what is your? And I don't even know if you're allowed to talk about this. But I'm sure you are. So no questions. But like, as an investment manager for the last X number of years, in the equity space, in the bond market, and all of that, what types of returns? What average types of returns were you getting your clients? Because in the commercial real estate space, right, we've been beating up your side of the aisle for quite a while. So, we make so much more than. But I'm just curious. Like, I mean, because
Yeah.
if I just blindly, filled out a little form and invested in a Roth IRA, and they just kind of like, all right, we'll put this in large cap, this in mid cap, this in whatever. Like that's
Yeah.
probably going to
Honestly,
spit out about 7.5%.
Yeah, if you pushed it out like 40 years or 50 years, it would probably be like 7 to 9% returns for the stock market. The 2010s was the best performing decade of the stock market in the history of the stock market.
The
So that's
2010s is from 2010 to 2020.
Yep. Essentially, the S&P 500 in that decade averaged 16% per year. So of course, it wasn't linear, but that was the average every year. So once you push over to the large cap growth, which is technology names, that number gets closer to 19%. But what you're talking about is a diversified basket, which is some small caps, some value, some
Right.
international, some emerging markets, maybe some bonds if you are closer to retirement. So if you thought about a 60-40 stock to bond portfolio over the last decade, we're probably thinking about something that was between 6 and 8%, similar to the numbers that you're talking about. And that's because the bond market was so atrocious with zero interest rate policy for, basically the whole 2010s. So now if we're talking about 2020s, the first decade of the 2020s was a recession with COVID, right? And then what we experienced last year, which is high inflation, the stock market fell 25% from January to, I believe it was August or September. Maybe we've come up 15% from that period. So I don't poo-poo like stocks. I don't poo-poo like the bond market. I think it fits into a certain class. And what we do over here is private investments, private equity. So we should get a more accelerated return because we're illiquid. So the premium that you pay for instant liquidity, I'm scared of, Amazon stock right now. I'm selling at this instant.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Russia invaded Ukraine. I want to get out of my oil-based investments or whatever that might be.
Okay. I've never heard it described that way. That's a awesome perspective. Well, we are running out of time. we dove in to end the show and then went on another 15-minute tangent.
All good. Sorry.
What is your favorite thing to do outside of work?
Me and Ria, we're both kind of like foodies, so we try to find like a lot of nice restaurants. So
Awesome.
tonight we went to like some nice French place, getting some steak and escargot and things like that. But we like to travel a little bit. I'm a big sports guy. So we try to go to some baseball games and some football games. But for the most part, like what a lot of people like, we got a place on the beach now, so that's easy to do some long walks on the beach with some podcasts, listen to, Rent Roll Radio Show.
Hey, that's a great show. That's a great show. Um,
Yeah.
how can our listeners get in touch with you, find out more about you, invest with you, learn from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think on LinkedIn is the easiest way to reach out to me. Pat Traynor, but Gamma Income is the managing director for, and Banana King is the name of the podcast. So we'll be on all the social media stuff in short order too. I have to just get like the video editor ready to rock.
Sure. Well, as soon as you're ready, shoot it over. We'll share it and get you as much attention as we can.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking some time, and it was good to catch up again. It was it's going to be interesting how it all works out. But I think like you're tied to my last day at work, and you're tied to when I quit. So
Nice. Next time we talk, hopefully I'll be unemployed as well.
Yeah, yeah. Give me a call when that happens. That's when we should do our podcast.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to keeping up with you in your journey, Pat.
Cool, man. Have a good one. I appreciate it.
This episode was brought to you by Crestworth Capital. If you're a busy professional and ready to make passive income from real estate investing, then go to crestworthcapital.com where you'll be able to download a free copy of our ebook to help you get started today. Until next week, happy investing.